Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. Before we get in the high tempo, Matt, I just want to talk about your game with Claysburg. Saturday night, it was homecoming, and the one thing that annoyed me, the lightning delay. First off, I couldn't even get the game. CKTV let me down on homecoming, so hopefully they get their stuff together because Monday I was able to watch the rest of the game. But I want to say I was following along, and I had a friend at the game to support you. Got the text that it was 38 seconds before halftime. They called a lightning delay and cleared the field and ultimately decided to cancel the game and play the rest of it on Monday night, which is what happened. And I ask you, was there any say on your end to just let the clock roll out? Because my understanding is on Monday, you guys came out, had to play the 38 seconds, and then take a break for halftime.
Yes.
And that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I had the option. After they put us on the lightning delay, the way that the rule states is that you have to wait 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of that 30 minutes, if there's anytime there's another flash of lightning, it resets that half-hour clock. So we were watching, and progressively it just kept getting later and later. And I really think that Mount Union's head coach would have just elected to just stay and keep waiting and playing until midnight to just get the game in. But eventually it was a call by our administration that it was getting too late until we get everyone back out on the field and we get everyone stretched and we play the rest of that out. The events leading up to it, we really came out flat, and I was really disappointed in that. But when you have your homecoming dance on Friday night, and then there was a parade on Saturday before the game, there were a lot of distractions, and we tried to keep our kids as focused as possible, but they definitely fell for the trap early. And the blessing in having the lightning delay is that we were able to have it picked up on Monday, so it was almost like being back on schedule. And as you're looking at the options at the time, it was, do you want to play out that time? And we had just scored our first touchdown, and then when we kicked off, Mount Union threw an interception, so we got the ball right back, and we were riding the momentum. That no, I didn't want to give that time up, because when we rescheduled yesterday, we could have had the option to just start the second half, but we were going to be kicking off. So I thought I wanted to at least take a crack at scoring, and in the event that we didn't get it, then we were still kicking off to start the second half anyhow.
I'm just surprised that the refs didn't have awareness to see that there was only 30 seconds left to play until halftime and then call the lightning, or was it that close to you? Because I know sometimes they follow the radar where you can't even see it. I've been in stadiums. We were at the Pitt game together against Florida State that one year where It wasn't even raining or anything yet, and they cleared the stadium and we had no idea why, and then it just poured. But at that point, I understand that's such a large stadium, it makes sense for them to try to clear it out before it happens, where in high school, if it's not that close, it's only 38 seconds. I'm surprised they didn't try to get you to halftime first.
I kind of thought the same thing, to be honest, but they were looking out for the safety of the kids, and there's I guess that's just the positive way to look at it. That I'd rather just have everyone safe than to have it be where lightning strikes somebody, and then that's not good for anyone.
Yeah, it'd have been tragic. I do want to ask one more thing. Did they give you the option to just forfeit the rest of the game since you were losing at that point?
I'm sure if I wanted to, I probably could have just...
I didn't know what the rules were, if you had to play a certain amount of time, or because I was afraid that they were going to say, hey, we already played one quarter. This is the final score. There's no chance for a makeup.
Well, that wasn't proposed to us, but I know last year we had a similar game where we were into the third quarter. It was like roughly midway through the third quarter, and we were winning close to running clock. That the opposing coach decided that it was just in everyone's best interest to just forfeit he was just willing to forfeit the rest of the game, and that was ironically how I got my first win was through a lightning delay and the coach just conceding the victory.
I bet you're happy just to have the other team give up, finally get that one.
That's right. That's all it takes. Unconventional, just like everything we do on this show.
Yeah, I was just curious to see if they would I was always afraid, I know for baseball, when you played in high school or in college, you're afraid to get to that point where you're like, oh crap, we're down by one. We feel like we have the momentum here, and then they're just going to get a lightning delay and then write it in the books, and you could never get that chance. Because I knew you guys had the interception, so my fear was that they were going to call it right before halftime, and then that was it, and they were just going to write it out.
No, I don't think, unless, because of there being that much time, you were going to try to play it out because there was just way too much time, and it was too close of a game. It would have been one thing if we were down by 5 or 6 scores, and it's just like, well, there's no point in playing this. But with it being a close game, and it ended up being, with the rest of the way the game played out, we ended up getting a interception return for a touchdown. And we put together a drive, and amazing stat. We rushed 33 times for 2 yards, and were able to pull the win out.
Holy crap, that's like Michigan State's offense.
Yeah, it was rough. And there was also combined 200 yards worth of penalties assessed for both teams.
That's ridiculous.
It was rough.
Well,
Lots
hey,
of improvement this week.
The delay probably helped you guys.
Oh, it absolutely did, because we ended up having an opportunity to have our kids meet on Sunday, and we reviewed the first half of film and got pizza for them, and we watched it together, and we're like, these are all the things we need to fix, and we're able to make some adjustments and capitalize on it.
Very cool. That's a James Franklin plan. When they get into a lightning delay, they like to order pizza and then post Instagram videos of them throwing Skittles in each other's mouths. Remember that? He said he didn't know what to do, so he ordered pizzas for the guys. That was at Michigan State the year they lost. Look that up. If you're a Penn State fan, you don't remember. You probably blocked it out. But I remember. I'll never forget things like that. You got anything for high tempo this week?
Yeah, while I'm continuing on the issue of officiating, Florida State got the dub against the Wolf Pack. And officials just whiffing on calls, just taking it to them. Had the targeting call that was a non-targeting, and just another day in Tallahassee. Unbelievable.
I'll say this. First off, I feel bad for NC State because the ACC network has turned into the de facto NC State network, where it feels like every time I go to watch NC State, they're shoved on that network. And I knew it was going to happen too, because they were probably like, these guys draw just enough to get fans to pay for this network, but not enough to have to put their games on ABC or ESPN. like it's like you're really close, but not that close. Like you're not like a Wake Forest where no matter where we put you, people aren't going to watch. So I feel like they're just taking advantage, and they're like, this is prime time. Florida State's not that good right now. Let's put them up against NC State. But on your fact of officiating, I'm going to get into this later in the show when we talk about paying players. I think the NCAA should take that over. If you're going to be this governing body and you're going to tell conferences not to pay their players, do officiating. Handle all of this stuff. I mean, at some point, it doesn't make sense for conferences to try to get guys, and I don't see how they're able to get guys that aren't fans of certain teams. Like the one refs that did the Ohio State game a couple years ago, it came out that the one guy was a big Ohio State fan and all this stuff. Like, I just don't understand how they expect neutral fans to come into a stadium and call it unless you're providing them transportation from outside multiple states. And the only way that can happen is if the NCAA starts footing the bill. So we'll talk about that later. Let's get into some Major League Baseball stuff before we get into football. Clint Hurdle, Pirates manager, dude, gets fired. A little bit too late. Too late. He had the annoying tendencies to keep playing guys that were hitting, $180, less than that at some points. Just throwing out crazy lineups, almost like a loyalty to certain players that just drove me nuts. Because I'm under the thing where my philosophy is you play the best players. If you have to move some guys around, move them around, but get your best guys in the game and try to give yourself a chance to win. And I felt like Hurdle didn't do that. There are multiple situations, and I know this year they weren't even close to the playoffs, but I also felt like they used him as a scapegoat this year. Talk about the last couple of years where he melted down in August. Get rid of him then. Don't wait until they weren't even close and then blame it on him. This year was a front office not paying players or enough, or not signing players. 3 of the Pirates pitchers are slated to pitch for playoff teams and are doing exceedingly well from, I think, the 2015 team. I was trying to look at the old rosters. If they would have extended them, the Pirates would have had a hell of a rotation. And they had the money to pay for these guys. They decided not
how
to.
How they get that money?
Matt, come on. Don't even give me that. They were just bragging about how they make so much money off opposing fans because Ticketmaster or whatever said that they were getting fans from outside of the regular zip code to go to all these games. Just pay for the guys. You either want to make it or you don't. And the worst part is Tampa Bay made the playoffs, and articles started to flow out. Hey, Tampa Bay made it with really low payroll, one of the league's lowest. How is that possible? Why can't the Pirates do that? And the fact is, Tampa Bay is not going to compete. If they end up in the World Series, I'll eat my words, but they're not going to. They're not going to compete. Just because you make it with a low payroll, it's very rare to have a Marlins-type team where you can win the World Series or like the Royals. And at some point, then you have to decide to pay. Like Houston won the World Series with their low payroll, and then the next year they jumped to like one of the highest because they knew, hey, we're going to try to keep this core around and we're going to make some runs. Pirates made their run. They had their opportunity to pay for the payroll. They decided not to, and now there's basically no hope right now. I get firing, but honestly, at this point, it's not going to make a difference. Anything you got baseball-wise? I know you want to talk about the playoffs a little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you're saying about the Pirates and them collapsing, and meanwhile last year we were talking about the St. Louis Cardinals not making the playoffs, and here they are, NL Central champs. So they made some moves that we talked about on the show that early in the baseball season. We're like, is it going to be enough to move the needle? They really didn't make a lot of. They made some moves at the trade deadline, but looking at it was like, I don't know if it's enough to really get them where they need to be. And they got hot and they ended up running away with the NL Central. You know, you see Madden with the Cubs got fired. Hurdle got fired. And I think Pittsburgh gave Hurdle the benefit of the doubt because he was there when they had those playoff pushes. But as you're riding that wave and trying to keep some level of continuity, the bottom just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And at some point, you got to just cut ties.
And I think that he was a scapegoat this year. I think you had a valid complaint against him the last couple of years where the bottom fell off in August, and you're going to say, hey, he's not getting it done. But now you're waiting until you're using it almost like an excuse to get the general manager out from underneath the microscope. Because now they're bringing in the front office. I think everyone's coming back. And all the coaches are gone, and they're up for, I think they said the new manager is going to decide who he wants coaching with them. But at that point, you know the tickets and stuff, they're not selling anymore. I don't think firing Clint Hurdle is going to change that. And I think they're kind of doubling down and saying, look, I'm waiting to hear it, but next year it's going to be the same. Hey, you need to support the team, and we're not going to have the money to pay for these guys. And yet you never did. You've had years to pay for them. You had the guys. Garrett Cole, I mean, come on. People are still pitching. Right now, you could have signed some of these guys. Instead, you let them go, and it's just frustrating. So, anything else you got on baseball? I don't want to talk about it too long. I'm cutting myself off.
Yeah, no, that was the only thing that I wanted to share was just, it was, you see an organization like St. Louis that puts it together, and they're not one of the highest paying organizations, I don't think. I think they're somewhere in the middle of the pack.
I believe so, but I'd have to look.
Yeah, don't quote me on that, but I want to say that typically they're somewhere in the middle. They're not overspending, but it's spending on the right free agents, because I see some of the argument is they want Pittsburgh to be this Moneyball type franchise, but the stars really have to align to make that work. I think when you look at some of those things, that if you have the youth and you potentially can get away with it, but at some point you have to value the players and kind of reward them for their loyalty too. And it was like, as with some of those teams that made the playoffs, instead of keeping those core group of guys around and maybe having a deeper playoff run, Pittsburgh just elected just to save the money. And it was ironic that they cut Hurdle the day they did, because it potentially was going to trigger some off-season bonus or something if they let him play it out the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's going to be something that you either have to make the moves or you're going to be stuck right there. And so opening day, Cardinals were 10th. I thought they were a little bit lower than that. They have a real-time tracker on payroll, and after they made their moves, they're now up to 6th in payroll. But you can see you're making moves to try to improve the team. I understand the Pirates aren't going to make a move to jump that high, but I could see them being more like the Brewers right around. Brewers at the beginning of the year were 14th in payroll. Right now they're winning in their play-in game, which I think if the Pirates are going to go ahead and try to be around the middle of the pack, that is what I think they can focus on. The Brewers right now, real time, they're down to 16th, so they dropped a little bit throughout the year because they didn't really make the extra moves. But be around there. You shouldn't be 26 to 29 every year. And I know they've been higher than that some years, but you need to try to go up and down, up and down, up and down. When you make your run at 15, you have to decide, hey, we're going to go up for a few years and try to capitalize. Whenever you don't, the fans notice. And then it just becomes something that's disappointing. So let's get into football. Steelers get the first win against the Bengals. And talking about a team that we thought was on the decline, looks like they started the season 0-3. They looked great last night. And I want to give a shout out to my guy, Devin Bush. I was worried about him. I think I talked a little bit about it on the show, where I thought it might take him a little bit to get up to game speed. But he showed flashes of it last night, blowing up a screen, I believe, reading a sack, great. He sat back just long enough for I think it was the guard on his first sack of the night, or I think it might have even been his first NFL sack. He kind of hesitated just enough for the guard to commit to double team the defensive lineman, and he snuck right by him. No chance. And he was all over the field, and I love to see it. I know you probably didn't get to watch a bunch of the game because you had your makeup game, but I heard his name a ton of times. I think he's on pace for like 150 tackles or something like that for the year. And great, they needed that guy that can have speed and that can get openings. One thing that I really liked what they did on offense was they didn't rely only on downfield passes. And they also didn't rely on runs up the middle. The running game wasn't really there, but if they can keep this kind of offense similar to the offense that Rudolph ran at Oklahoma State, where you're using short passes and screens to act as your running game, the running game opened up late because of that. And I think one of the ESPN announcers was ragging on the Steelers the entire game, saying about how they're not going to go anywhere if they don't take shots downfield. But I really liked the offense because the Bengals, they could never really get settled. It seemed like, okay, what are we going to cover here? Oh, there's a crossing route, another little screen, and then here's a delay run that goes for 6 yards. And it really kept them off balance, and it felt like the Steelers, they started off kind of slow with it, but once they got in their groove, there was no chance. And then they even had the one touchdown run, which was a short out. And there was enough delay by the Bengals where he caught it. It was a second read. And then the tight end still had enough separation to make the block to get him in the end zone. So it's crazy that you can throw them off. Now, it's the Bengals. I don't know how good they are. 0-3 themselves. I thought with Andy Dalton, they should have been the ones taking shots downfield, and they didn't really do it. The Steelers' defense has been lacking the last couple of weeks, with Devin Bush seeming like he's going to shore up the linebacker spot and make plays all over the field. They really didn't have anywhere to go. Joe Hayden dropped an interception that hit him right in the hands. that I thought he should have had. And I don't know if that spooked Dalton, but after that, he really wasn't taking too many risks, and Bengals couldn't get anything going. So it was almost like they talked about how the Steelers' defense was awesome and how it carried them in the game. I really think that the Steelers' offense, mixing things up and keeping the ball for as long as they did, really messed up the Bengals' offense, and they had no chance to get back into it. So it was like a strange game to watch. It was almost like domination from the entire thing. It was like watching a college game where you have one of those offenses like Oregon, and they're playing a team from a lesser division that just doesn't have the horses to keep up. They can keep the clock going with their short passes. They don't really have to threaten deep because they know whatever they're doing is getting open. And they're able to move the ball. And that's the Steelers I want to see going forward. I don't want them to shift their offense into a big play offense like they relied on with Ben, because I don't think that they need to. I think they need to do more of the ball control, push it, give their defense some breaks, because you don't want all the pressure on your defense. And right now, like I said last week, get this win, beat the Ravens on Sunday. It's at 1 o'clock. Beat the Ravens. You'll be 2-2. Could be tied for first in the division because of the way the division happened with the Browns killing the Ravens on Sunday. You're right there. And then you play a bunch of bottom feeders. The thing I don't want to see, Steelers cannot lose to those guys. You can't lose to the teams that are 0-3, 0-4 like the Dolphins. You can't do it. If you beat the Ravens, you cannot have a collapse. You got to run through them, run through the Colts, and there's one other team that they play before they play the Rams. They should be 5-3 if they beat the Ravens. They have a very good chance of being 5-3 going into that Rams game. That's what I want to see happen. And I think they have a good chance. I feel more confident after last night's game. And like I said, I just hope that it's not fool's gold where, yeah, you beat up on the Bengals, but they're awful this year. Any thoughts for you, Matt? Did you watch any games this weekend?
Kind of thought the same thing. I was able to catch a little bit of the game. I recorded it and just kind of fast-forwarded through some different parts. What I really liked was that, you're right, they did get multiple running backs. They had Samuels involved. They had Connor. They did some different stuff to get the ball out in space, and I think that really helped Pittsburgh get stuff going. And when you're looking at the issues with the defense and giving up points, the best way to do that is long, slow ball control offense. So I think you're right. By continuing to do that, that definitely sets them up for success going further down the road.
And actually, it was split pretty even. It was 29-46 for Pittsburgh. They didn't even have the most, but the yards, 326 yards and 20 first downs. The Bengals only had 175. So even though the time of possession, time-wise, didn't matter, the Steelers, it felt like they were just grinding the clock out because they had the ball. I think the time of possession was helped by a couple of short fields because the Bengals did have an extra turnover. They had 2, Steelers had 1, but it just feels like when you're able to run that offense to get guys that are open, keep the defense off balance, it's not going to be something where it doesn't have to be the Steelers of the old where you're just running the ball. It doesn't have to be that. Keep the defense fresh. Run some screen passes, all kind of stuff. You're getting valuable minutes out of your wide receivers now that look like they could be 3 deep.
But I wonder how much different the offense is now with looking at game planning without having to try to feed AB and Bell. Because they definitely pushed it more vertically with Brown there and with Roethlisberger quarterback, and that seemed to be more of his go-to, which I think led to some of the mediocre play. That if you're going to have Ben dropping back, running around, throwing it up deep, and giving Brown time to get behind the secondary, you don't have that anymore. That it sets itself up for the better skill set of the wide receivers that they have.
Well, yeah, and they're able to they ran Wildcat a bunch with Samuels. I know you brought him up, but you're able to get guys in that don't have to typically run. They can be more versatile. The leading receiver was James Conner. I know it seemed like the commentator last night was dogging him about how he wasn't able to move the ball. He was still their leading rusher and leading receiver. And then you had Samuels, also had 8 receptions. So him and Connor both had the highest receptions on the game. They both had 8. The first receiver only had 6. And that's just due to the swing passes, the checkdowns, and other options because they kind of snuck in Samuels as like a de facto wing or / off the line tight end because he played that at NC State for a bit. So you have a lot of versatility with him. I think they said, did he have, what was it? He had 3 passing attempts, 3 for 3. I don't know if they were counting shovel passes or what there, but because I don't remember him actually throwing, although I could have just missed it. But you're at the point now where you have the offense. I don't want them to just panic and shift into, okay, that's not Steelers football because we only had 66 yards rushing. That's not Steelers football. We can't do that. Even though we had 260 yards passing, it just doesn't make any sense. The fumble they had was Johnson, and he caught the ball, made the break. He still had 77 yards. He was the leading wide receiver with touches, and he had a touchdown. You had him with Washington and Juju. That's a good receiving core that a lot of people thought was going to be weak. They thought it was going to be Juju or bust. Let's triple team them, and the Steelers weren't going to get anything. So if their number 3 is able to get touchdowns, and we're not having the drops that we had, it's going to go a long way. I think this could be a turning point of the year. They have, like I said, Ravens next. That's the big one. The other team was the Chargers right now. Chargers aren't anything special. Then you have the Dolphins and the Colts. Win those 4 games, and then you have a chance for the playoffs. If you split them, it's iffy because I don't know. Right now, the division is a crapshoot. They have to win the division. I would say that the AFC is Patriots, Chiefs, or bust, but the Chiefs almost choked on Sunday. They should have lost to the Lions. And I thought the Lions could have played it a little bit more down the line where they could have tried to just extend it and not gave the Chiefs the ball back. I honestly thought that they might have had a chance to just take a knee and try to, I think they kicked the field goal and then watch Mahomes drive right down the field for the touchdown. And at that point, you're looking at a Lions team that already has a tie. You're up. You're up, or whatever the ending was. I think they had the lead by, it might have been 3 or whatever, and they went. I think they could have tried to just extend the time a little bit more because you knew they were giving them too much time on the clock. So it has to be a heartbreaking loss for them. But right now, the AFC is Patriots undefeated, Chiefs undefeated, and then everybody else. Well, I guess the Bills are 3-1. But everyone else is 2-2. So
hey, don't undercut the Bills Mafia.
Hey, Allen got hurt, didn't he, at the end of that game?
Yeah, he got crushed.
Yeah, so who even knows what could happen with them? Because that's a very Bills thing to have your quarterback get hurt, have an early start, and then just fall apart. So I hate to see anyone get hurt like that too, because the Bills could use that, and I think the Patriots could use a little bit of competition in their division, because the Jets and the Dolphins aren't giving it to them. That division settled. It was either going to be Bills and Patriots. Bills hung with them, almost got it done, and they couldn't. Unfortunately, Allen went down. I don't know if he's out for a long time or not, but definitely not good. But the rest of the AFC is kind of open. Raiders are 2-2. What do you think about that? You think Gruden's going to make a run?
He could potentially squeak into the wild card.
I predicted 8-8. I think that's what I said on Twitter. He's on pace for 8 wins. Double last year, 4.
So he is on pace. I think he could do it. I mean, when you look at the South Division in the AFC, they're all tied up right now, 2-2, and there's not really, they're limping through it. So there's definitely availability for them to squeak another team like the Raiders in.
True. On the NFC side, you had the Rams lose. And they lost in stunning fashion to the Bucs.
Stunning? They got Jameised.
I don't know if that's a reference to his on-campus antics, Matt. Is that what you're referencing?
Yeah, winning. That's what he did, winning. And you know what he did against the Rams? Winning.
Because, like I said, that was going to be a pivotal game for the Steelers. I had chalked that up for a loss. But now, I don't even know what Rams team you have because, let's face it, if you lose the Super Bowl, usually there is some type of hangover. You get the Rams at home in Pittsburgh in a couple weeks. But you have to get through the Ravens first. If the Steelers end up splitting 2-2 and they're going to be, 3-6, it's over. They need to beat the Ravens, like I said, and then sweep those out-of-conference games. Beat the teams that you need to beat, and then right there as a Ram will be a good test because first three teams of the season look like playoff teams. You lost to all three. Niners right now are in front of the NFC West. You have Patriots, of course, cream of the crop in the NFL. And then you had the Seahawks, which are right there. Could be a wild card team if the 49ers were to win the division. And Steelers lose all three. So you got to be able to beat teams that are in the playoffs. Anything else you got on the Steelers?
Nope. Think we covered it well.
All right, I got one big question for you. Did Humphrey choke OBJ? Did you see the play I'm talking about?
Which one?
So there's a video. The Baltimore Ravens, their actual website, ravens.com, they had a writer write an article about how Humphrey did not choke OBJ. And they posted a high-definition, slow-motion video. Must have been shot at field level, so they must have got it from one of their cameramen, that was supposed to show him not choking OBJ. But when he put him to the ground, the camera was behind OBJ, so you couldn't see if he was actually being choked or not. Because they got into a little bit of a scuffle. OBJ...
It definitely looked like a choke.
It definitely looks like a choke if you look at the actual TV angle, because it shows the left hand. Looks like he's on the throat. Because OBJ, they're fighting. OBJ did like a helmet punch. And so then Humphrey swept his leg. And they wrote in detail. Let me see if I can actually... I don't know if they took it down, but I'll see if I can read a little bit of this article because...
Well, while you're looking for it, if the Ravens site did take it down, then you don't have to worry about it because clearly if you take it down, then it's like, oh crap, we were wrong. It really is him choking him out. So we better take it down before we get in trouble.
Well, here we go because most of the articles here that I'm finding are actual news organizations talking about how crazy it is that they would be denying it. The U.S. News Report, Fox, Washington Post. Here it is. The article's titled, Marlon Humphrey Didn't Choke Odell Beckham Jr. by Ryan Mink. So he's a Baltimore Ravens staff writer. And he said that two players got into a fight, and Browns head coach Freddie Kitchen sounded off on why Humphrey wasn't ejected, and he said he was going to talk to the NFL. So then the Baltimore said that if there was going to be an ejection, it should have been for Beckham punching, even though punching is not an automatic ejection. In the rule book, it seems like you're allowed to punch people.
You're just not allowed to have helmet-to-helmet direct contact like Vontaze Burfict.
Oh, yeah, Burfict, we got to talk about that, too, because he's out for the year. You want to talk about that first? Because we talked about that. What game was that? Was that 2 years ago now? Bengals Steelers, where he took Brown out?
Yeah, that's why his head was okay, because he wore that shut performance helmet.
Hey, what if that was the start of his issues? You never know. You never know. I don't remember him throwing things out of his apartment building until after that happened. So
CTE.
Yeah, so Burfitt's gone, and they came out and said that it wasn't because he was a repeat offender or something. They were trying to be very vague about it, which struck me as odd, because if you're trying to get these players to reform and not do helmet-to-helmets, you almost have to kick out repeat offenders. Because that was clearly a helmet-to-helmet.
During the broadcast had said that it was a repeat offender. It was the third time in however many years that...
Yeah, they did say it was the third time.
That it's been an incident. So I mean, you're demonstrating. I mean, whether they want to say it or not, it is a repeat offender violation.
And Matt, there's always one announcer that says, "That looked like a clean football play to me," which just drives me nuts because he clearly launched. And you don't have to. If you see a receiver going across the middle, this is a telltale sign. If you're a defender, don't put your head down. Don't put your head down. I forget what game it was. Was it a college game?
No, it was Ryan Shazier put his head down.
No, not that one. It was just happened just this past weekend, where it might have been. Was it Rutgers, Michigan? I forget. I don't know what games all I watched. It might have been UNC Clemson. But a defender led with his helmet, head down, tried to hit the guy. I think he got ejected. It might have been Wisconsin and Northwestern. I don't know. I'm tired of guessing which team it was. But whatever. The defender came up, led with his helmet. Then, of course, he was slow to get up. And then they were like, "Oh, what do we do? How did he get injured on this play?" They showed the replay once, and none of the announcers said anything about it. And I was like, it's pretty clear. He put his head down, probably hurt his neck, and they're like helping him off the field. And I thought, there's nothing you can do. As a coach, if your player's going to put his head down and jump at the guy, and the guy's running, and if you hit it at an odd angle where your neck's just going to bend, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get hurt. Keep your head up. That's the very first thing when this is how many years ago did I play youth football? 20 years ago? The first thing we were taught was keep your head up. These players in the NFL are just launching with their heads down. Perfect. Head was down. You're out. There should be no appeal for it. Because I don't understand how the defender can say, "Yeah, that was just a football play. I didn't know he was gonna go down." Like, what do you mean you didn't know? Was your head not up? Well, no, I was looking down. Like, why? That's the only line of questioning the NFL has to say was, "Did you see what was going on?" "No, I didn't." "Why?" "Oh, I led with my helmet. I was looking at the grass." Case closed. Case closed. That's it. Speaking of crazy news, before I get back into this, did you see the Players Association is trying to get Antonio Brown his check from the Raiders?
Well, I saw he set a record for most grievances filed. He filed like
I did see that 9 or something like that.
Yeah,
but the crazy thing is, he's trying to collect money.
It's not just his money for Raiders; it's everything.
He didn't play. He's trying to collect all these player bonuses. I think it's a joke that the NFLPA, and I know they're trying to protect other players, but I don't see how this helps them in the long run. You got a guy who did it himself. He went out there. I know, I don't know if he's committed crimes. I think they said it was outside of the statute of limitations. So I don't want to say he wasn't out there committing crimes, but there was some legal stuff to it. He didn't play. He got kicked off the team. I don't see how he should get paid for that. What did he do for the Raiders? Skip practice? Call the owner a cracker? Like, what are you doing, NFLPA? There are other players out there that you can be helping out, get health insurance. What about these retired guys that are injured, can't get stuff? Why don't you help them out instead of helping OBJ get money, or not OBJ, Antonio Brown get money when he is out there doing it himself? I just think it's a bad look for the league. But we'll see what happens of it. I wouldn't be surprised if they made the owner pay him something, which to me is just crazy. But maybe he'll finally go away at that point. Back to this article, though. They said, based on the close-up footage, Humphrey pinned OBJ on the ground after about 3 or 4 things happened. It appeared that Beckham, his actions drew the first flag, which would mean that Humphrey's retaliation would have caused offsetting penalties. Let's walk away from that, and we'll just move on, Harbaugh says. The play happened in the third quarter, so they don't even say. So then here we go. It was a run play. Humphrey took to the turf a wide swing, or Beckham took Humphrey down with a wide swing of his right arm, which then Humphrey grabbed the front of Beckham's jersey and popped to his feet. Beckham then grabbed Humphrey by the face mask and punched the side of Humphrey's helmet. Beckham didn't let go of Humphrey's face mask, and Humphrey didn't let go of Beckham's jersey. It stayed that way after Beckham tried to sweep Humphrey with his leg, but instead pulled him to the ground. Humphrey pinned the receiver to the turf, but contrary to what Kitchen said, he did not wrap his hands around Beckham's neck and he did not choke him. But if you watch the video, the left hand looks like it's on the neck. But
it was near. It was grabbing the collar.
But the crazy thing was,
like this, there it looks like you're choking yourself.
But those jerseys don't really stretch. And they're already on a jersey, so you can't tell me his jersey's so loose that he was able to have a fistful of it from his chest mat all the way up underneath his helmet by his neck.
Well, how's the league ripping people's jewelry off?
I don't know.
There you go. They wear it loose around the neck.
All I'm saying is, I thought he got choked. I think it's crazy that the Ravens went down and obviously got a field level camera. So one of their guys, because I think was it at Baltimore or was it in Cleveland? I can't remember now. I did watch a game, but I want to say they went and got a field cameraman that's down on the field. They're not using footage here in the video that they showed because it's level with the ground. So they went out there and found their own video that purposely has the choke hidden and then posted it on their website. Because I'm looking at it right now. I'm trying to see. The ref's leg is even in the way of the close-up video they have. That's how low to the ground the cameraman is. He's probably kneeling, looking down through his lens, and you can't see it. It's crazy to me. So, I don't know. I think he choked him. What do you say, Matt? Did I miss your thing there? Did you cut out? Do you think he choked him?
Yeah. What's that?
Do you think he choked him?
Yeah, he choked him.
All right, I thought you were going to side with the Birds there. The Ravens, you always seem to side against the Steelers, but lucky. I think he choked him. I'll post that video. Well, I'll post the article in case I cut it out, but we'll see what happens. Getting into college football now, California has signed the law to pay athletes for their likeness. So what this means is they're the first state to allow players to get money off their name. So instead of like NCAA football, if EA Sports decided to make a football game, they could offer each player $500 to get their name in the game or something like that. Players can either say yes or no, or they can say, I'll do it for $1,000 or $10,000 or whatever they need. And then EA Sports can either say no or yeah, we'll do it. Hey, we want you on the cover. Okay, I'll do it. Can you give me 20 grand or whatever? Players can then make that money and they can take it. Now, whether there's been talk, I don't know how they're actually going to disperse it. There's been talk of maybe having it go into like a savings account with the university, which then is kind of a ripoff because then the university, makes interest off that? But I don't know. But they're going to try to do something where they might not get it right away, or they might hold it until they leave the university or until they graduate. I'm not sure what the actual implementation is going to be, but North Carolina now has one down here. Florida, I think theirs is already being pushed through faster, where they said Florida might be the second state. And we had talked about South Carolina already having one and a couple of other states now. So it looks like it's going to be a nationwide thing. The NCAA, of course, they stepped in and said, no, don't do it because it's going to be too hard having all these different rules. And I understand that aspect of it, but people have been talking about paying players for what seems like 15 years. Maybe not that long, but at least the last 5 years they've been talking about paying players, and the NCAA has done absolutely nothing. So at this point, I'm glad that they're pushing it through. Because a lot of people, if you didn't play college sports, they do give you a waiver, and you have to sign over your likeness for whatever purposes. So if the NCAA would take a picture of you playing sports, they could actually sell it on a poster, and you would get absolutely nothing for it. It's supposed to be an exchange for your degree. But what if you're an athlete that played for 1 year and then left, like Maurice Claret? What about him? He can't make money off his Ohio State stuff. His pro stuff didn't work out for him. Didn't get his degree. Ohio State could reach out and say, hey, we're going to honor your degree and let you get your degree. But the NCAA, they're not going to do anything. You think they're still going to sell Claret jerseys on like the anniversary of the national championship? Hell yeah, they are. They're not going to put his name on it, but they'll put the number, what was he, 13?
Yeah.
So you have guys like that. And the NCAA, so they can't say, oh, we're doing what's in the best interest of the universities and the athletes. It's not for the athletes at all. Because if you want to make money, you can do it. Even if you wanted to make money right now, you could still do it. Some people set it up. And of course, if you wanted any reason to think that this was a good idea, Ohio State's athletic director came out today and said that he's against it. So, if Ohio State's guy's against it, it's probably good for the little schools. Because there's probably some hidden meaning where, hey, they already have these unknown perks that the Purdue's and everyone else can't compete with. So why would one of the bigger schools speak out against it unless it was going to hurt them in the long run? Because now you're giving the little guys room to legally maneuver and pay guys. And that's from a school that was caught and had to vacate wins for paying players and giving them perks, Matt. So knowing, it's almost like the pot calling the kettle black. Like, nah, we don't want to do this. It's not unfair. It's unfair. But weren't you guys already doing that to begin with?
Well, I think that's just it. That to me, that was one of the things that I kind of looked at with all this is that you have the basketball scandals that are going on that in one way or another, the players in these bigger programs are already getting paid. And it's just a matter of, are they going to legalize it? And how, and you can debate all day about what the best course of action is to do that and how you're going to police that. But it still just kind of takes away. I mean, the people that end up losing in this, in my opinion, are going to be the lower level Power Fives. But I mean, they already are at a disadvantage. So they're it's in some ways it's not really affecting their ability to move upward into a Power Five.
And to be honest, I don't even know how much it's going to hurt them, because before they're already filling their rosters with guys that Ohio State or another big university has turned down, if we're being honest. Like if you're Cincinnati and you're trying to recruit a guy from Florida, and like let's say, okay, his dream school is Ohio State. Ohio State says, hey, we don't have enough room for you. And then he's down to Cincinnati, or maybe he stays in Florida and goes somewhere else. Now you're Cincinnati, you can say, hey, we have a car dealership that will sponsor you and give you $5,000 if you come here. It might sweeten the deal enough to get these out-of-state guys to take a move to some of these smaller schools where before it's not like, and that Ohio's probably a bad example, but like let's say you're Boston College. How are they going to recruit enough guys in Massachusetts to go to their school? They're competing with all these guys from Florida. They have to convince them to move from Florida, to move from New Jersey, to move from all these other places up to there. It has to be hard. At least now you're able to say above board, okay, we can give you some money to help out with that. Outside of the scholarship and all this other stuff, like, hey, we have this guy. If you do this, hey, look what we do with Doug Flutie back in the 80s. Like now you're able to leverage some of that stuff where before you're kind of just stuck. Like even Pitt. Pitt can't fill their roster with guys from Pennsylvania because they keep losing the battle we talk about all the time. They lose it to Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. All the local guys. And so they get, and I hate to say it, but they get the leftovers. And then they're stuck pulling guys from maybe Virginia Beach, but then they're competing against Virginia Tech or some other school down there, or maybe all the way to Florida. And then now you're looking at it and you could say, I can go to Pitt or I can stay at UCF. UCF just went undefeated. Where do I go? Pitt might be able to step in and say, hey, you know what? We can give you some extra money, or we can get you an endorsement deal with so-and-so here in Pittsburgh. PNC Arena, whatever, blah, blah. Heinz Ketchup, we're going to give you a Heinz Ketchup deal if you come here. And I think it will help out some of the smaller schools like that. If you're outside of the Power Five, you might have a drop-off, but let's be honest, you're not really competing now at all. It's not fair anyway. SMU's undefeated. You think if SMU goes undefeated, they're going to get a shot at the playoffs? No.
Nope.
So the one thing that you did bring up about basketball.
Are they Big 12?
SMU, Matt, come on. What do you think this is, 1970? Craig James playing for them?
That's right.
They got booted from that was whenever was it Southwest Conference, SWAC? They got booted from that a long time ago. They're with the UCF's conference now. They're in the other division. So if UCF won out and SMU won out, they'd play in the championship game, I believe. But going back to the basketball thing you said, the one thing that made me pretty sick to my stomach reading it, they snuck in a law in California at least. That's why I hated if there was only one national one and this came in. But the California law says that if your school is sponsored by an apparel company, So Nike and Adidas, they funneled all kind of money to this governor or those politicians out in California to get this snuck in there last minute. But they put in there that if your school has a deal with Nike, you can't go and get an endorsement with a rival company. Bullshit. Why would that be, Matt? Because these schools don't want to see, just like the NBA, they don't want to see a guy wearing Pumas or something else that's outside of the official sponsor. So right now, you're going to get the same exact thing, at least for basketball, that we already have. No 5-star guy from the Nike circuit is going to go to an Adidas school. Not going to happen.
But I'll take that a step further. What does that do if you're paying players? What does that do to your transfer portal? Well, I'm gonna go to this, lower level Power 5 because I don't have a lot of big time offers. Play a year, do really well, and then it becomes where do I get the most money moving up?
Well, that's where I think that they could limit it. Like if you transfer, you're not eligible to get certain endorsements or something like that. And I think that's what you'll see happen because that's already a problem with transferring. So I'm not saying that I want it to happen. I'm saying to look for something like that to happen to prevent it. Where, hey, if you get this, they're not going to be above board. Plus, if I could also see something where if they did the endowment route or whatever, the scholarship route or savings fund route, I also think that's another method to keep players at a school. Hey, we'll give you $100,000, whatever, to come to Michigan, but you have to be here for 4 years or you don't get it. Or like it drops after every year. Like you come here and you want to get another offer from someone else to transfer after that first year or the second year. And I think that's where like maybe the NCAA implements a rule where you can transfer, but if you want to try to take money, you have to sit out a year. No more waivers. Because that way you're either going to sit out because you want to go to that school, and then that would limit your funds. Like let's say if they buy a year, no school's going to offer a guy $200,000. Like let's say Michigan offered a guy $100,000. He comes there, plays out of his mind the first year, and does awesome. USC, a booster's not going to come in and say, hey, transfer to USC, we'll give you $200,000. And then he has to sit out a year to make that money so that he only has, a couple years left, and then he's going to want to jump to the pros. Like, I think that just won't happen if they implemented something like that. So I think that that's going to be the limiting factor. Hey, you go to Michigan or you go to the school that you committed to, you have to play or graduate. I mean, they could even do graduating because that would force some of these guys that leave for the NFL to come back and get their degree. Will all of them do it? No. Like, I think Larry Fitzgerald just got his degree a few years ago. I remember seeing commercials about it for some reason. So, like, that could be a reason where, hey, I decided to get my pit money. Could you imagine how funny that would be? Like a 40-year-old guy just going back because he wanted to get his, like, $20,000 or whatever he got at college.
Well, there you go. Antonio Brown. He's back in school right now.
Yeah, he is. Did you see his post? He needed someone to help him with his English.
Yeah, he was right.
He was definitely trolling. At least I think so. I thought it was funny.
Got a paper due. T.O.
So I will say, yeah, that could be another case. You're out for the year, go back to your degree and try to get whatever extra money you have. And then I also want to see what they will do after you graduate. Because, like, let's be honest, if they open this up, and I don't even know if it's legal now, but, like, Desmond Howard, him doing that Heisman pose, he probably sells thousands of jerseys every year at Michigan because he won the Heisman and did that pose. So he can go back and sell his 21 licensed Desmond Howard jersey. People would go nuts for that. But I don't know if you're allowed to do that yet once you graduate or not. Like, I don't know what the actual rules are. So I think that could also open up some of that stuff as well. Because I do have a number 2 jersey, but I don't know if it says Woodson on the back. I even might have a Desmond Howard jersey, but I don't know what it says on the back. I'll have to look and do some research. But I wonder if that would open up other avenues too to get some of those guys that maybe jumped pro early and could help recruiting in the back end. And I'm thinking not just for big schools like Michigan, but I'm thinking like for going back to Boston College, get Doug Flutie, he's always doing commercials. They open this pay for players. Why wouldn't he go back and endorse it? Or like get Chris Paul from the NBA to come and endorse Wake Forest or Tim Duncan. I guarantee a bunch of kids don't even know that they went to Wake Forest down here, a smaller school. Get some of those guys to come back and help out with some of these new rules. Like, I really hope that it opens up some of those doors to get past players instead of it feeling like athletes that go pro kind of just get ostracized and they're out there on their own. And I hate to see it. So, anything else you got on that?
Nope.
All right, I got the big one, the big one. All around college football, Matt. Down here in North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Clemson and North Carolina. You know what everyone's talking about?
Are the players going to class?
Close. The big one is, do you have to apologize for making fun of opposing fans? Did you see this?
Oh, my God, no.
So, during the game, the UNC, it was at North Carolina, it was at Chapel Hill. So during the game, they had a break where on the video board, you know how they do like the kiss cam, whatever, they zoom in on couples or whatever. So they zoomed in on Clemson fans. And instead of doing a kiss cam, they put up little jabs at the fans. So one of them said, like, actually is a UNC basketball fan. There's a group of Clemson people here, and it says, thinks that Clemson is in Georgia. What's the other one? Can't name Clemson's last head coach. Also a Patriots fan, and thinks the fridge is just a kitchen appliance. So they put these up, and I thought they were funny, not really harmful. And I've actually seen these before, I think, in baseball, maybe minor league baseball. Like, I swear I've seen this before. But in today's outrage culture, the athletic director down here in North Carolina, he had to issue an apology because Clemson fans were writing to him about how upset they were, Matt.
They're probably upset that they almost lost to UNC.
Mac Brown, baby. Could you imagine that? You went to a game, they put your name up on the board, which, number one, these guys aren't even looking at the board, and let's be honest, in the middle of plays, I'm not looking at the board. I'm like looking at the game or something else to see what actually is going on. But you'd be so outraged that they were making fun of your fellow fans that you would write a letter to the athletic director. He got so many letters, Matt, that he had to publicly apologize.
Who writes letters anymore?
Probably emails, right? I think he said that he's taking time out of his day to make sure he responds to every email. So let's be honest, he probably didn't get that many emails. Maybe
we need to write him some letters just to get it on official letterhead.
Yeah, I think that's what we need to do. Hey, can you give us a statement on this? We're gonna talk about it on the show. So that's what people are talking about. But what they should be talking about is Mac Brown's decision to go for two. So I don't know if you watch into that game. It seemed like they were in control. Would you have went for two there?
That's one of those decisions that you have to make that ahead of time as a staff and decide if it comes down to it. Do you kick it? Do you go for it? Like, we had talked about it ourselves. Like, if this game comes down to a 2-point conversion or it comes down to a third, fourth down, what are we going to what are we going to go for? Are we going to kick it? You have to think about it ahead of time and have that plan and just be willing to stick with it, win or lose, and that way it takes some of that emotion out of it. So I'm sure to them it was go for the win. You had nothing to lose, playing at home, ride the wave.
I'll say this. I've seen it live in person. Michigan went for two against Ohio State. And I thought that it was the correct decision to go for two because Devin Gardner got hurt in that game, Michigan quarterback. Turned out he was playing on like a broken foot or something. So in that situation, yeah. If you know your quarterback's not going to be able to go in overtime, go for two. They didn't get it. This game, at first, Matt, I thought, going into the drive, I thought, okay, if they score here, they should go for two and try to win it. But as the drive wore on, I saw something that made me change my mind. Clemson's defense was not getting a push. Mac Brown was running that same stupid fake zone read that Michigan's offense has been running. You know, the one where it's supposed to be like an option. Oh, he can zone read it. He can run it. But the quarterback is never going to run it because he's just back there like half-assing it Like, he's like just hanging out there. And there's zero chance of him running because he's tired. Clemson wasn't getting any penetration to blow that play up. Like, if Army is able to get penetration on Michigan to blow that play up, there's zero reason for Clemson not to be able to blow that play up on UNC. I mean, UNC struggled this year. Clemson has all kinds of NFL linemen. They should have been blowing that play up every time. Instead, UNC's running it for 5-7 yards a pop. I thought for sure when they went for 2, they should have just ran that play. Ran that play and did it as a pass option. Because the quarterback's not going to run it. So give him an option to throw the ball if they do decide to actually get pressure. But instead, the one thing that really disappointed me, and I'm cool if they go for 2, I thought just because of that, they dominated Clemson that last drive. I thought that they didn't really do anything on defense that would have scared me. Like, I wasn't afraid like I was for the Lions in the Chiefs game. Like, I knew the Chiefs were going to go down and score. I wasn't afraid that Trevor Lawrence was going to drive them to win the game with a minute left. I thought if UNC ties it, it's going to overtime.
But Clemson's offense is so weird because they go through spurts where they're not moving the ball or they're not scoring. And then it's like all of a sudden, oh yeah, we're going to just run play action pass and just chuck it deep. And
that's exactly what it is. They're going through the old Penn State playbook back whenever they went through their first transition, and it seemed like they didn't have guys on the page where they were just literally chucking it up. And they had athletes to out-athlete a lot of teams. I mean, look what happened in the Wisconsin Big Ten matchup for Penn State. Penn State should have lost that game. And instead, they realized we have nothing left to lose. Let's just start chucking it deep. And Wisconsin had no idea what to do. Like, they didn't start to give their guys help or anything. And so Clemson, yeah, they could have done that, but I think Mac Brown is a good enough coach that he would have had help, and I don't think that would have been a factor with a minute left. So I think you would have got to overtime, and would have Clemson got a resurgence? I don't know. I don't know if they would have done that. But I thought with UNC having, I think he was a freshman quarterback, you either stick with what you've been doing, don't do any weird, like, I hate when teams try to, like, extend it out like they did. You haven't been doing that all game. Why do it at the goal line and give Clemson some life? They're not getting pressure up the middle. Run right at them. If your line's getting pushed and you're able to run a stupid zone read that takes 3 seconds to get off and you're getting 5 yards to carry, run it and do like the old Tebow tight end pop pass over the back. So if the linebackers crash, you just float it up and win the game and then have that stadium go nuts. That's my only doubt. That's the only negative that I had to it. Like, go with your strength. Don't do anything crazy. I mean, look what Pitt did when they won against UCF. They did their crazy play, and it worked. They could have done anything against Penn State, but they were just hammering up the middle. Do what your strength was. Like, they're moving the ball against Penn State because they were, like, running screens and stuff. Do that. Why change your philosophy when you get down to the goal line? It makes zero sense. Like, it's like, all right, we're down here. What did they do in 1976? Well, the Steelers, they used to just plow it right in the back of this line. All right, get in there, guys. Go up there. That's what we're going to do. Or UNC, it's like, hey, what do other teams do when they're down here? I don't know. They try to, like, run a sweep or an option or something. They're like, yeah, okay, let's do that. It just felt like very rushed. Like they had no plan. They must not have thought, like, hey, what if it comes down to a 2-point conversion against Clemson? And I could just imagine all the coaches laughing. Yeah, right. And then it did, and they had no plan, so they were panicked. So, and that's my mindset, that's how they were, Matt. So I thought, play for overtime. If you have a play, fine. But if you don't have a play.
Yeah. I mean, you usually want to think of at least one or two that are your go-tos for that situation.
And I felt bad. I thought their onside kick, I felt bad for the kicker because that was perfect. And I thought that their scheme was dumb as hell. Because they ran down UNC's guys. Their kicker was coached to pop the ball up. So there are a couple train of thoughts here for like onside kicks. What a lot of teams have been doing lately is they've been popping the ball up further and having the kicking team run down and kind of just like take out the receiving team. But what UNC's kicker did was he popped it short so that their guys would have a chance at the jump ball, except none of the Carolina guys turned around. So I don't know if it was like a miss kick and they were supposed to barrel it and he was supposed to kick it further, or if they should have just had one guy kind of hanging out and waiting for that ball to pop loose, because once it popped loose, there was no one there. Everyone was kind of like locked up with the Clemson guy, and then Clemson had the extra guy to just run up and get it. Very weird.
Yeah.
Very disappointing. Like, I don't know if that was their game plan, or hell, even have a guy from the other side run down late, like just angle over and try to recover it if it does pop loose, but they had no one there. So it was almost like, wow, that was perfect, except you guys didn't have anyone to cover. All your guys ran right by the ball. So very disappointing for their kicker, because he has to have nightmares of that. I know if I was a kicker, I would just dream of that for like every night for 7 years straight. Like, no, get it, guys. It was right there. We could have beat them. I mean, you might not even have beat them, but hell, at least give your team a chance. Let's see. Go around college football. So, Matt, we talked about Florida State earlier, but ESPN eliminated them from their playoff talk. And for my ACC thing, Florida State's right in that race.
They are. I mean, the crazy thing is, now that they're finally starting to get some defensive play, if they beat Clemson, I mean, it's with what I saw from the UNC game, it's plausible. There's some chinks in Clemson's armor. It's not going to be the gift wrapped, but if they were able to get by them, they're in the driver's seat for the Atlantic side to potentially play for the ACC championship. If you win the ACC championship, you stand a shot at potentially getting a berth, especially if you end up playing Virginia on the other side and then beating them, one of the teams that beat you in the regular season.
Well, let's not get too crazy here, but I will say before I get into the ACC talk, the Pac-12, they have no undefeated teams left. So and I'm at the point now where if your conference has an undefeated team, it's going to be an automatic bid. Now, what helps out the SEC getting like an extra bid or a Notre Dame is Pac-12's already eliminated. So that's it.
Oh, yeah.
So what the only downside for Florida State right now is if they were to win the league, the ACC with 2 losses, they might win the conference, but I don't think they'd get the playoff bid. I think Notre Dame takes it, especially if Notre Dame beats Michigan. Because I think Michigan might be the only team Notre Dame has left that could give them a fight. And we don't even know if Michigan even has a chance to do that. Michigan could get steamrolled like they did against Wisconsin if they can't get their line figured out. So you'd be sitting there with a 1-loss Notre Dame team that only lost to Georgia. I think they would be the rep from the Pac-12 and the ACC just because they play so many teams from those conferences. Because I don't think you have Wake Forest and Clemson and Florida State right now at the top of that division. I'm not buying Boston College, so I think it's a 3-team race. And let's be honest, would you bet on Wake Forest right now? No.
No.
So your only chance for a crazy ACC is for Florida State. They beat NC State. They go to Clemson, though. They have a bye week this week. So if anyone could be prepared for the upset, that's it. I would say that Clemson is going to be a scary place to play. But hell, was it Pitt or NC State almost beat them there a couple years ago? Pitt did beat them there, didn't they? Was that at Clemson?
It upset them. It was at Pitt.
Oh, it might have been NC State that almost upset them. They missed a field goal or something and went to overtime. So, I mean, they're not unbeatable at home. The big key factor is going to be ABC didn't announce yet. I've heard that they're down for 2 games that weekend. It's either going to be, is it Iowa and Penn State or Clemson and Florida State that are the same time frame? And maybe I'm wrong, but they have to decide which one's going to be the big ABC game. And so if they pick Florida State and Clemson after this week, then that's going to be the primetime night game, which might swing things into Clemson's favor. Because usually night games favor the home team, especially one where there might be an underdog. But that could still be an early game, which could lend itself to a Florida State upset. After that, Florida State only plays Wake, Syracuse, Miami, Boston College. That's it. That's not a tough schedule. They could win If they beat Clemson, they already have the loss, so they couldn't lose again. But that's not a murderer's row. I mean, they could lose to Florida. I could see that, but I mean, what's the difference? And at that point, then you're going to come down to, does the ACC push to get Clemson in as a one-loss champion or non-champion, or are they out completely? I know there's a couple other races that are still going to run, so it's going to be crazy.
But I think if Clemson loses, I think they push the ACC out because Clemson won the national championships recently, that I think they would push them out to try to spread the wealth around it. It would probably end up being in Oklahoma and Ohio State and then 2 SEC schools.
I'm honestly going to say I don't think it would be. I think Notre Dame would get in again.
Well, there's some of these.
Well, that's if Notre Dame comes down and beats Michigan, though.
Their top 4 is like LSU, Alabama, Georgia, and like Oklahoma or Ohio State.
But I can't buy stock into that yet because they haven't got through their conference. This is only 4 games into the season. LSU could still shit the bed against like Mississippi State or someone that's weak, or Ole Miss or someone. So we don't know. I don't buy into the ESPN rankings because those aren't the official playoff rankings. If it was week 8 and we had more of a picture, I could see that. But I'm saying they're going to favor name brands and they're going to try to get a little bit different geographically. I don't think they're going to put – they saw what happened last time they put 2 teams in. They've talked about getting 2 teams from the same division. But at that point, do you really say, okay, we're going to leave one-loss Clemson out, but we're going to let one-loss LSU in? Or hell, they could have 2 losses at that point because Auburn's sitting right there. Like, it really depends on how it shakes out. So are you going to let the one team that lost to Alabama, but their best win is what, going to be Auburn and then who? Sure, LSU beat Texas, but we don't know how good Texas is. So we'll find out in a couple more weeks. I think you have that. The big game for the Big Ten this week is going to be Michigan and Iowa, because Iowa's undefeated right now, and they are a dark horse to get into the West, kind of like a playoff team. If they can make a run, of course, they would have to beat Wisconsin. I don't think that they have the other crossovers. Wisconsin, I think, has to play everybody, which really hurts them. I know they already beat Michigan, but they have to play. I know they don't get Penn State. They get Michigan State at home, but then they also have to travel to Ohio State. So that's a huge game for Wisconsin, where Iowa gets Michigan, and then they have Penn State. If they get through those 2 games, even if they only have 1 loss, they could be the Western champ. So they have to split. They either have to beat Michigan on the road or they have to beat Penn State at home. And so I guess that would be, ABC would have to decide if they're going to take, and I guess they're waiting to see how this game against Michigan goes. I would think that if Iowa beats Michigan, Florida State wouldn't have the night game against Clemson. If Michigan beats Iowa, I think Florida State Clemson might be that night game on ABC. But we'll see. Because I don't know how the new contracts with Fox work too. Because I have been under the assumption that Michigan Penn State in a few weeks was going to be Penn State's nighttime whiteout game. But I've heard that Fox really wants that game for their big noon slate, which will throw a wrench into their whiteout plans. So I don't know if that's a thing, but I've also heard that if that happens, ABC still gets to pick. They are guaranteed to have 3 Big Ten night games. So if you're not going to get the Iowa-Penn State game, and then you're going to lose the Penn State-Michigan game, like what other 3 games are you going to have left? Penn State, Ohio State? You're not going to have the Ohio State-Michigan game. That's a noon game ever.
Oh, Nebraska will be one.
Nebraska already lost, though. They got killed. So I think you're really hurting yourself. So it'll be interesting to see. I think they're waiting to see what the reactions are this weekend. That's really one of 2 games. You also have Michigan State and Ohio State. So we'll pick those 2 games. I was going to pick Penn State and Purdue, but Rondell Moore's out for Purdue. So I think that's a lock that Penn State's going to win that game. And I think Purdue has a ton of other guys injured. So first one for the Big Ten, Iowa at Michigan at noon. Who do you got, Matt?
Tie. It's going to end in a tie.
Do they still do that? No, I think you have to go for 100 overtimes, don't you?
Yeah, you do. I'll go with the home team.
All right. The line's been getting suspiciously low, almost to the point where they think Iowa's going to win, and I'll pick Iowa. I think Kirk Ferentz gets it done. And then I think you have question marks on Michigan's side, and then they're in the rule of spoiler. And like I predicted earlier in the year, are they going to turn that into an all-out assault to try to upset Ohio State and finally beat them? Or is Harbaugh just going to walk away? We'll see what happens. If Michigan can come out, I just don't think Michigan can get it done. Unlike the Steelers, they don't focus on having the quick pass game replace the run game. I think if Michigan showed me they could do that, I'd be more confident, but they showed me that they can't. The only change they made was they moved Josh Gaddis onto the sideline. So I do have a question for you, Coach. Is it easier for an offensive coordinator? I know you call plays from the sideline. Would you be more comfortable in the booth or on the sideline?
To me, I like being on the sideline, but the thing that makes coaching from the sideline work is you have to have people in the box that can help spot for you and give you the information that you need, because there's some stuff that you have a better view. You have a better view from the box of what the defense is trying to do, but at the same time, if you're trying to get a hold of certain position players or you need to talk to a player, it's a lot easier, obviously, doing it from the sideline. So there's pros and cons to both, but personal preference, I like to be on the sideline.
And I think that was a big key where he's able to get his guys on the same page, and I'm hoping that you don't see as many delay of game penalties or things like that. The other game, Michigan State versus Ohio State. Who do you got in that one, Matt?
Oh, Buckeyes run away with it.
I think the Buckeyes are going to just tear through the Big Ten, much like you saw Michigan do, was it last year or 2 years ago, when they hit on their run. And I think that's just, they're clicking right now. And hopefully they don't have any injuries. Like I think that same Michigan team got, was it the year Spade got injured? The one year Michigan was tearing through the Big Ten and someone got injured. So I think as long as Ohio State stays healthy, they keep rolling. And I don't think that one's close. The ACC game, the big one of the week, because I also noticed, Matt, unfortunately, Clemson has a bye week this week too. So not going to be a big point in Florida State's favor. But Duke, Pitt, who do you got?
Well, being that they narrowly beat Delaware, we'll go with Pitt.
I know. Jeff was suspiciously quiet after he posted all that stuff about being at the Pitt game. Watching that narrow victory, I was like, yeah, not surprised. That's very Pitt-esque.
Very much so.
I mean, there's a couple other games, but I think the only other big one would be Florida, your boys, and Auburn. It's Auburn at Florida.
Oh, War Eagle. Georgeville finally comes down to reality.
And that's going to be my final bell here as we shift into it. Jorts. Did you see that Blake Griffin was on the Michigan sideline rocking a pair of jorts?
Yeah, because you sent them to me, you weirdo.
I didn't send you that picture, did I?
No, I wasn't. Yes, you did.
No,
because that's just what you do.
No, bullshit. I don't remember doing that. So we'll have to see. I'm going to send it to you again, though, just in case you didn't see it. And you're lying to me. But maybe jorts are a thing now. Maybe that will help the offense explode. Maybe that will get your team ranked in the top 10. You don't know what a top 10 team looks like, Matt?
If that, I do know what a top 10 team looks like.
All right, you got anything for the final bell? Are you breaking up there? You got anything for the final bell? Or are you good?
The only thing that I wanted to complain about was, come on, Atlanta, the Falcons. Their defense is absolutely horrific. They have so many weapons on offense, and they just, like every drafter, just like, hey, who's the most talented offensive player? And do nothing for their defense and just let them just give everyone that was decent on their defense away. And then it's like, hey, I don't know why we can't stop anyone. Losing 24-10 to the Titans, just giving up points. I'm taking the fantasy wins, but it's like I want to see Julio get a ring.
It's not going to happen in Atlanta. They've already talked about getting rid of the head coach now. But like you're right,
They should.
Well, you're right. At some point, you have to make a decision. You can't always be an offensive juggernaut, especially if you're not putting up points like Kansas City. Like if you only get offensive talent, you need to have offensive power. Scoring 10 is not going to get it done if your defense sucks.
That's right.
You got anything else?
And also, old Hugh Freeze getting it done with Liberty. He won 3 in a row, looking to go 4 in a row here versus New Mexico State this weekend. Coaching from the you were saying about coaching from the press box versus the sideline. I want the NASCAR pit box that they made for Freeze. It's like every week. It's like where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Like, hey, where is Hugh Freeze going to coach from this week? Will it be a bed? Will it be a chair? Will it be in the pit box? Where will he be? You have to try to find him. Win a prize.
Makes it very easy for him to coach from the strip club that way.
You get a good view of all of the dancers.
All right, well, that's it for the show. Check out our website, southboundsports.com. I want to try to put up some links whenever Matt's team goes live on YouTube so you can watch his games there. If you want to, make sure you subscribe to our show and support us. You can support us by clicking on our Amazon affiliate link and shopping through that on Amazon. Any purchase you make will help support the show, so we appreciate that. Again, make sure you tell your friends, and we will see you next week, so thanks for listening.